when you're on that real cusp between life and death, that's when you feel fully alive. Well, yes, but let's be clear. It's Everest Base Camp. You can walk to it. You get up to 18,000 feet. It's the 11,000 feet above it that is the hard stuff.
I'm going to put it this way. Their influencers are one-dimensional, meaning that they see them on a screen and that's all they see and know about them. So my guest today is Charles Grimes. He is an internationally respected leadership consultant, a business psychologist, the author of A Question of Leadership. And in fact, you can find him at aquestionofleadership.com. So,
yeah.
Charles,
well,
welcome to the show.
Thank you, Chuck. It's good to see you. It really is. Lovely to be here. And as you said, it's when we think of leadership or teamwork or whatever, we tend to think of work. But I think it really starts at home. This can certainly be, or your community, but it applies just as much at home. How you lead your family, how you connect with your partner, your spouse. It all comes down to this. Yeah.
I think you kind of say in your book, leadership is not about what you say, it's about who you are. And again, in this world filled with motivational speeches and leadership hacks and what qualities do you believe in, and people constantly underestimate when it becomes, how do I want to say this? They underestimate what it is truly to be a great leader. I think, and
well, yes, or a great or a good person. I mean, coming back to the family. Anyone who's got kids or has had kids will know that they don't learn from your wise words. We can say all the right things to them, but that has no effect at all. It's how you live your life. And that is far more important. I mean, words can be important, of course, and there's always, we can think of speeches by people, whether it's Churchill or Martin Luther King or a whole host of people. We can think of speeches that have moved us and where it was really important. But how you are is much more important, I think. And that comes down to, let's take Nelson Mandela. Did he do good speeches? Well, yeah, it's not really what he's known for, I don't think. I don't think of him as a fabulous orator. But there's something about Nelson Mandela that you just thought, this is a man that comes along once a century. I want to be in his presence. There's something extraordinary about him. And that's... but he doesn't have to say anything. And that brings us back to the music. One of my things is when we're talking about leadership, again, so often people will talk about big business or the military or politics. But I think if you want to really understand leadership, an excellent model, I think it's the best model, is symphony orchestras and conductors. And how those interact, or symphony, or conductors and choirs. I sing in choirs, and one of the interesting things that's relevant at the that we can just talk about now straight off is that with conductors, they don't say anything. Now, of course, they don't say anything in the concert. Interestingly, although their names are in big letters on the billboards, they're the only person on stage who makes no sound. And that's always interesting, I think. It's something's clearly going on about how, so you can, to think about how are they communicating. But they don't say anything in rehearsal either, or very little. And because at a professional level, which is what although I'm not a professional in that sense, but I've always sung at a professional level, or in a professional orchestra. We don't want a lecture about the music. We don't want you to tell us what you want. Show us what you want. And you can, and they do. So, and it all comes from the body language and their face and their eyes and their gestures. You can get everything across. And that, of course, when you realize just how important your body language is, well, for a start, if you've ever heard somebody and there's a sometimes you hear somebody say something but their body language is telling you something, something very different. If I said to you, Chuck, now, gosh, I hate you. Now, of course, the words are meaningless because it would be obvious that I don't hate you, or if it was the other way around. So, in fact, if there's a mismatch, the body language almost always will trump the two. But so yes, it's terribly important to get the body language right. And I said, if you're with your kids at work, think about if you come out of a meeting, your team will know how it went just by the way you walk out, how you hold yourself.
Yeah.
And if you're looking like this and you say, "Oh, it was really good," I mean, they know, you've probably been fired. So yeah, you've got to. It's amazing what we can communicate with just our bodies.
Yeah. It's funny. As soon as you started talking about that, and you were thrown in the music, I instinctively went to guitar players and pianists. Where I see in a symphony or some sort of orchestra, or maybe they're just doing a solo piece, and the piano player, they just play, they play.
Yep.
Maybe it's the ones that you see at department stores. They play, they sound good, but the ones that you see in the doing on stage and they're really into it, they're just, and they are really into what they're doing, and I don't know, I look at it as such concentration and such love for the music. And same with the guitar players. You can't tell that with a trumpet player or anybody like that. Their cheeks are always so
yep.
But body language, again, to me, I go to shows and I look at the entire band on the stage and I enjoy knowing that they are enjoying. That's probably a little bit off of what we're talking about, but
I think
when it comes to that body language,
we can go in all sorts of different directions. Yes, I think one of the things when you were just saying about the pianists who are really giving it their all, I think they're giving it their all, or guitarists, is that when you're performing, you've got to take risks. That's one of the things that professional musicians are doing. They're taking risks. It is, and in front of 2,000 people, 3,000 people, not many of us would, in our day-to-day job, are putting ourselves on the line like that in front. I mean, most people, if they had to do their job in full view of the customers, they wouldn't like it. But musicians do, and you've got to go up to the limit, not beyond it, of course, because then you can fall apart. But you're all the time, you're taking it up to how fast, how exciting can I make this? But you've got to just stay on the right side. Hopefully, of course, that the audience, they can tip over. So if it's a very emotional moment, I mean, if you're playing the piano, you can't cry. That would be too. That would you'd have crossed the boundary then. But you hope the audience is getting emotional. So it's I think that's again something that we can all learn from musicians, is that you need to take risks. You really do, because that's when we become fully alive. And that, I mean, I'm also interested, this is completely separate, but people in mountaineers or climbers, Not that I do either of those. I don't want to. I haven't got the courage to do that. But any of your listeners who might remember back, I think 2017, when Alex Honnold climbed El Capitan in Yosemite. El Cap in Yosemite is that sheer 3,200 feet wall, and I mean, lots of climbers climb it all the time, but he climbed it, as they say, free solo. And what that means is he climbed it with no ropes whatsoever. And he climbed it just with his finger ends. And it's like climbing up the wall here. I mean, it's just extraordinary. Now, he practiced and practiced and practiced it with ropes so that he could eventually do it. But the point I want to get across is he knows that better than anyone. I mean, it just took just under 3 hours to do it, which is staggering in itself, that you can go up a 3,000-foot wall in 3 hours. But the thing was that there he is. He knows that the slightest lack of concentration, and that's it. He's gone. There is no safety net, absolutely none. So, and they had various cameras up and down, because it was all filmed. They had various cameras up the face. And there's one glorious bit in the film Free Solo when he's doing it, when he does something quite clever, and the camera is just there, and he smiles. And here is somebody that, I mean, there's 2,000 feet below him of fresh air, and he's just clinging on like this. But in that moment, and the whole moments of doing that, he is fully alive. And that's the thing I think we all need to remember, that it's when you're on that real cusp between life and death, that's when you feel fully alive. Now, most of us are not going to go anywhere near that. But that's, from a music point of view, when you are taking as many risks as you can, that's when it's exhilarating. And I think that's what we want to encourage our colleagues to do. We want to encourage our children to do it, to take risks, because otherwise, what's the point?
It's kind of like what you were saying. You take it to that point, you take the risks, but you don't go beyond. That's a risk that is a foolish risk to take. Yes. That's beyond what my capabilities are. So, I guess what we're really saying is, take risks. And I'll call it a calculated risk. Don't go beyond and be ridiculous about doing something.
And sort of Alex Honnold had built up and up and up to doing this. So he's taken risks since he was a little lad. So, but so of course you don't go and do something as amazing as that straight off. It took him 10 years of practice to do it. But it's all calculated. But my word, those are some calculations.
Gosh, yeah. Well, you've had that unique experience, and I'm going back to music because you, I believe you performed at Buckingham Palace and you met King Charles.
He was, he was Prince Charles at the time. So this is a few years ago. Yes, it was. Well, that's one of the things about music is you get to play in or perform in all these wonderful concert halls. We're terribly fortunate. And when the opportunity came for the choir that I sang in at the time to go, and so Prince Charles was the patron, and there was some anniversary on, and we were invited to go and to go and sing there, and that was lovely. And it's you get to go into the big ballroom and perform. But I think what I got from it is that, well, for a start, he could, after the concert, he could have just gone, he could have gone and talked to the audience members, but he didn't. He came specifically to come and talk to us, the performers, because he just thought, well, you're the ones that have done it. I can talk to those people anytime. But so he sought us out. And the other thing about when I got to talk to him is that he put you at your ease, because he knows that this is his home, pretty much. Whereas for us, it's not. We've never been there before. So we're going to be slightly intimidated. We're also going to be slightly intimidated about meeting him because he's been so famous. So he does everything he can to put you at your ease. And it's very simple how to do it. He just asked me something, and then just listen. So that's all you're going to do, is ask a question and then shut up and listen. But really listen. Don't. There's this in English. We have this in the language. We distinguish between hearing and listening, which I think most languages don't do, or lots of languages don't do. But we can really listen. And that's what he did. Now, just for a couple of minutes. Now, then he moves on to the next person. And, I'm sure 15 minutes later he wouldn't know me from Adam. But that's okay. It's a technique, but it's a very impressive technique and he's been practicing it for years, for decades. But it was just a way about how you can put people at their ease, make people feel comfortable. And that's what we all want to do, I think. And the important thing is that people like to be listened to. Everyone does. And just ask them something about themselves, and then it's easy. Really is.
Are those some of the things that you think that leadership at the highest level have not perfected, but they have that skill, like you said, of listening, of being interested in you, even for that moment? Is that?
Well, I think yes.
Is that part of leadership at that highest level?
Well, I think listening generally is the highest, most important thing, because it's all about connection. How do we connect? If I'm how can I connect with you? Or how can I connect with my kids or with my colleagues? Well, just you listen to them. That's the first thing you have to do, and that really means being curious about, especially if your views are different from mine. Well, I tend to think, great, because otherwise, actually, if they're the same as mine, it's a pretty short conversation. If I say, oh, I love Beethoven, and you say, oh, God, I love Beethoven too. Well, now what? But if I say, right, Chuck, I love Beethoven, and you say, well, I like, Duke Ellington or something. Fine. Then we can talk. Tell me about Duke Ellington, why you like that, and I'll tell you about that. Then we can have a real discussion. But the thing is to be curious about what you're listening to. And most people, I think, or a lot of people, no, I'll say most, are not curious. Really, what they're doing, if they're in a conversation, is they're just waiting for you to pause for breath, and then they will come in with the next thing they want to say. They're not really interested in what you want to hear, what you want to say. So, but it's wonderful to hear different views. I think it really is.
Now, I'm going to throw a little twist in there. Do you think that the youth growing up today, whether it's in the States or if it's in European countries or Far East, that they view things differently than you and I did when we grew up? Because now their influencers are, I'm going to put it this way. Their influencers are one-dimensional, meaning that they see them on a screen and that's all they see and know about them. And then the viewers, the kids, that's all they want to know. I don't want to know anything else about anyone else or anything else about that person. So it almost to me gives this false sense of what a leader might be, um, or a false sense of how I can be a better person to be a leader. Am I making sense on
Well,
that? Or am I
yes.
just...
So yes, you've, yeah, you've struck something very close to my heart there. So I think this world that we've created, where we look at the world through screens, is profoundly bad. That sounds quite strong, but I will stand by it. That as human beings, we should be connecting with. I mean, it's nice, of course, that you and I can meet, and we can't get together easily. So, of course, this is a second best, but it is only a second best. It would be much better if you and I were in the same room together, and now, of course, you and I we've experienced a world without screens very much, but now I think it's well, it then slips into the the Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever TikTok is, showing my age there, or my interests, where we were endlessly comparing ourselves. It's a false world. Everyone is, I mean, I hardly use Facebook because whenever I do, one of my colleagues will invariably just have taken a selfie of, oh, I've just run this wonderful workshop and here I am in Rio de Janeiro on the Copacabana. And you think, really? Why don't you just tell us about that your mum's not very well, or that you lost a client last week, or your kids are not doing very well? Let's have the real world, the fuller picture, rather than this just airbrushed view of the world, which is so destructive, I think. And yeah.
We as I'll call it the viewer, we've fallen into that trap as well. And I think we perpetuate certain things like that because we may have conducted an important meeting or a training session or what have you. Very few people care. But if you say, oh, I had the best meal today, or hey, I went to whatever it is today and watched them race dogs or do something like that. People are like, oh, thumbs up, it's great. But they lost sight, I think, of, and we have lost sight of what is important. And again, hopefully this ties into that leadership.
Completely, yes. So I have a number of heroes. One of my heroes is a man called Ian McGilchrist. And for any of your listeners, I strongly recommend. He was. I was at a conference a couple of weeks. I mean, I've known Ian, and worked with him for about 9-10 years now. But somebody recently referred to him as the prophet of our age, of really showing what the challenges are that we're facing, and it's particularly his thing is he's a neuroscientist. And his particular interest is in the structure of the brain, and the structure of the brain. All brains of all animals are in two halves. So that we have a left hemisphere and a right hemisphere, and so all mammals do, birds, insects, reptiles. But even if you go back to 700 million years, the most basic creatures, that already their neural networks are starting to divide. So this is extraordinarily fundamental that we have these. And in Britain, in humans, we pretty much have two brains in our head. They're there for very different reasons. Because at one level, we need to be, our focus needs to be extremely precise, really sort of extremely narrow, so we can pick something up, we can grasp something. And that is extremely important. It's important for us. It's important for, let's take a bird, for example, that's wanting to pick up a seed, and it's able to pick up a seed as opposed to a bit of grit with this extremely narrow focus. But if it just had that narrow focus, it could end up being lunch for somebody else, for another creature. So it has another, which is the right hemisphere, which, if you like, sees the rest, sees the other 357 degrees. It's set up to designed to see not just what it knows on the ground, but what it doesn't know, everything else. And these are, I said, these ways of attending to the world are so important that we've had to develop, in effect, two brains. And it's not that one is better than the other. So in many ways, the left hemisphere has done absolute wonders, and it's in many ways has given us the world that we have around us, that's allowed us to achieve things, to manipulate the world around us and create these wonders that we have, like the laptop I'm talking to and the microphone here, all these staggering achievements. But it's not a good master. It's this that sees the whole, if you like. This side really, it only sees what it knows. It doesn't see the rest. It really doesn't see the rest. And over the last 2,000 years, the balance has fluctuated. So for a period in time in our, our civilization, in the Greeks, there was a time then when the right hemisphere was clearly valued. This was important, but this was really valued. Then in the Roman civilization, there was a period. Then moving up into the Middle Ages, there was a period. But the Ian McGilchrist's thesis is that we're in a period where the left hemisphere is extremely dominant. And this is extremely destructive because it's, as I said, we just see what we want to see. It's extremely, for example, bureaucratic, lots of rules. But any ideas you were just suggesting of truth and beauty and goodness, not valued.
Yeah. For those of you who are just jumping in, watching, listening, I'm speaking with Charles Grimes, and you might think to yourself, why does this guy know so much stuff? Well, I'll tell you, Charles is a respected leadership consultant, a business psychologist. He's also a broadcaster. And, we're talking a little bit about his book, too. And the book is called A Question of Leadership. And that's the same thing for his website, aquestionofleadership.com. So I want to ask you, like many of us would feel like, well, I dreamed of doing this, but I didn't quite get there, so I failed. So if you felt like it was failure, what actually became one of the best things that ever happened to you because of that?
Yes, well, it certainly did feel like a failure. I always wanted to fly. And ever since my father was a pilot in World War II, so I'd grown up with stories about that, and I always wanted to fly. And so then at the age of 17 or 18, I applied to the Royal Air Force, and I went down for officer selection, and I just thought this is going to be a shoo-in, really. And they had other ideas. And it was, initially, I think what I imagined that the reason was they just thought, okay, you're not a good enough pilot. Or you won't be a good enough pilot. And But in fact, I mean, okay, sure, I was never going to be, a test pilot, a jet fighter pilot, but, I could have learned to fly something. But actually, I don't think that's what they were meaning at all. Because I think what they could tell right from the start, as soon as I walked through the door, probably is, you're not one of us. And they're not saying I'm not a nice guy. I think they might well have said, I'm putting words into their mouth now. They might have said, well, yeah, Charles, you're a very nice young lad, but you're not a military man, are you? Now, I hadn't thought what a military man was. I just wanted somebody to pay me to fly and to teach me. But there's so much more that's needed. And so, for example, if you're a military person, you've got to be, certainly at the initial level, you've got to follow rules. You've got to do what you're told. Well, I don't. And I'm not somebody like that. And it's not, again, it's not that it's better or worse. It's just different. And I think they could tell that. And that's a very important part of, I think, any interview. So, for example, my son, he works at Deloitte over in Houston. Now, he's 34. I wasn't at his interview 13 years ago. So I'm just guessing this. But I'm pretty sure that the people who were interviewing him would say, look, we know you know nothing about tax or accountancy or consulting. We can teach you that stuff. But what we're really looking for in this interview is, are you a Deloitte guy? Are you going to fit in? Are you a corporate man or lad, as he was then, 21? And it's not that there's anything wrong in either way, but we want to know that you will fit in. And it took me decades, and I really mean decades, to get to realize that I think that's what they were telling me. And it would be a very long time, because I got a diagnosis 6 years ago now, rather late. I'm 72, so this was when I was 65. And I got a diagnosis for having Asperger's, which is being on the autistic spectrum. And some of my colleagues and friends, when I told them, they said, "Oh, what's it like being autistic?" And or finding out you're autistic. And I just said, it's absolutely liberating. It was a wonderful day, the 4th of December, 2019. And the reason it was, I suddenly realized it's okay to be me. Now, it's a wonderful thing to discover. It's a bit late to do it when you're 65. It would have been so much nicer if I'd done that 4 decades earlier. But, hey-ho, it's better to learn it at some point. But yes, it's okay. I don't have to hide. And that's what for all of us, it should be something to celebrate, that I'm me and I don't have to apologize. Yeah. But I think many of us do. I've done it most of my life. Not so much apologize. I just hid. In the jargon, I camouflaged my behavior. I masked my behavior so that so to appear like most people. And that's not good. It really isn't.
Yeah. Well, so what if, organizations, instead of viewing neurodiversity, Asperger's, autism as something that they need to accommodate, what would it be like, do you think, if organizations began seeing it as this competitive advantage? And how would the individual begin to see themselves as having a competitive advantage?
Well, there are organizations that already do. So I think it's quite a few years ago now, Silicon Valley tech firms there realized that we need people who think differently. and many of those are have Asperger's got a high functioning autism, and so absolutely they're needed. But what they also realized was, well, these people. I wouldn't come into that category, but some of those people, they're not going to show up well at an interview. It's a traditional interview. You go along for 2 hours and do your various tests. They're not going to show their best at all. So what we need to do is, okay, we need to bring them in for a week, and let's just see over a period of time what they can show us. And if they need some quiet space, which many of them do, because one of the things is that very often we can feel overwhelmed by stimulus, by noise, by other people. Well, here's a quiet space. You can go there. You can go have a little pod where you can go and do your work alone, and we won't bother you. So yeah, I think organizations, many of them already do have latched onto that. And for the person, yeah, I mean, I've been independent now for almost 30 years. But for a little while I was working in this area of learning and development, but I worked with an organization, and they didn't, I'm not blaming them, but they didn't keep me. They didn't make it easy. So, for example, I remember having a meeting once with my line manager, and we were, it was in January, and she's going through my goals for the year and my targets and my stretch targets. And I can still remember sitting there and thinking, this is absolutely mad, because I don't function like this at all. I don't have targets. Now, there's nothing wrong in targets. Some people do. I've got other colleagues who, every Friday, they know exactly whether they're on track financially. I couldn't tell you, every 3 months or every 6 months. I don't work like that. But at the same time, I've managed to keep a business going for the last 28 years. I've brought up 2 children. I've got a couple of houses. So, I haven't done that badly, but I've done it my way. And, but it would have been, now I can be proud that I've done it my way. Whereas for most of that time, I've been in awe of the people that do it the traditional way. And that's not good. Because whilst I'm thinking about them, I'm not really thinking about me. I'm not thinking about, well, exactly what do I think about things? I'm not really developing Charles as a whole. So I would strongly recommend everyone to try and be themselves as early as they can be, and the world won't come crashing down around your ears. It certainly hasn't for me. But I was frightened of it, of course. Yeah.
Well, it's for those who are on the spectrum, but then again, perhaps everyone is on some spectrum, someplace,
Yep.
right? Hopefully the people who are watching and listening understand that they're okay, and that they don't function like everybody else, because everybody functions differently. And hopefully they have the voice to say, I don't work that way, or I can't work that way, but this is how I work, and feel comfortable about saying that and being themselves and who they are.
And I think as well that bringing this all back to leadership is that. So leadership is not a list of 10 top tips and you'll be an outstanding leader. I mean, really, it's like follow these 10 top tips, and you will have the perfect marriage. we're looking at it's a bit more sophisticated than that. So when we're thinking as a leader, it's all down to relationships. It's so if I'm the CEO and I've got a top team of 10 people, well, I have to have a relationship, and a pretty good, strong relationship with each of those people. But we know that having one good relationship with your partner is hard enough. So having 10 is really going to be, it's going to take a long time. But you've got to do it. That's the job. And if somebody is, therefore, as you just said, we're all we're all wired differently. Well, yeah. So as a leader, it's up to you to find out how they're wired, and you connect with them, or at least go halfway. It's not up to them to fit you. It's up to we need to both find some middle ground.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the most powerful things that you said early on about leadership and being a good leader or strong leader is that ability, that skill to listen to somebody and to pay attention, whether it be for the 10 seconds, 10 minutes, or, for an eternity, being able to listen and being attentive to what they're saying. And that's not only in leadership in business, but that's leadership in life. So let me ask you then, Charles, what's one of the best leadership advices that you've ever received from someone?
Well, I suppose if you, it's like, so if you were to, it would be the same answer if you said, well, could you sum up leadership in a sentence? And it would be, it's how do you help your people thrive? And that's what I would say that would be the best advice you could give anyone, is just to be thinking. I mean, in some ways, leadership is very easy because it really is no more complicated than that. Now, of course, it's difficult to do that, but the actual idea, I think, is very straightforward, is that you're there to help your people thrive. Nothing more and nothing less. And that, of course, comes down to your community or your family. For me and my partner, it's to make her thrive and think about her how can I make her life easier? How can I support her when she's struggling? How can I support her when she's joyous? How can I help the kids? Both of my kids now of course have grown up, and they've both got young babies now. And well, what can I do to help them in that new situation for them?
It was a possibly dangerous question to you. Who's a leader that is past or present that you'd perhaps admire most for their leadership qualities or whatever it is that they do?
Well,
dangerous question.
No. It's dangerous in that one of the things that so leaders are important, of course, but and most. I mean, there are thousands and thousands of books about leadership. If you go onto Amazon, there's another one. But most of them, as soon as you open it up, and they might have leadership in the title, and immediately they will start talking about leaders. And they're two different things. I think incorrectly they conflate two different, philosophical entities, if you like. One is leadership, and one is leaders. And it said it's so. My idea, my view is that leadership lies with all of us. Now, of course, some people are the CEO, or they're the team leader, or we got the World Cup on at the moment. You've got the team captain who has the armband on. They are the leader. But some people, some business people, they distinguish between headship and leadership. So headship, lies with the person who has the title, the CEO, the team leader, the football captain, whereas leadership moves round constantly. So if we're playing football, say, the leadership sits with the person with the ball. So if I've got the ball, for that moment, I'm in charge. I decide, do I kick it left or to right, or do I kick it straight ahead? Do I move? And as soon as the ball's gone, it's then moved over to somebody else, and they have the leadership. So the leadership is moving around because we are deciding where the ball goes, not the captain. The captain does have a role, but we're deciding what happens. And that's exactly the same in a team, in an organization. Yeah, you've got the team leader, but each one of us should be contributing and taking on certain leadership responsibilities. So that's one thing about leadership. But when it comes to leaders, one of the things is that leaders are only part of the picture. So what you have to think about is, yes, leaders are important, but what about the people that they're leading, the followers? So you have leadership and followership. And because that makes really quite a difference. Because you can lead that group doesn't mean you could lead that group. It's also then what are you doing? What's the task? So, for example, one of the famous examples is Rudy Giuliani, mayor of New York in 9/11. That, from all accounts, he was just the right guy in the right place. He did a fabulous job at that time. Doesn't necessarily mean he's been perfect ever since, but at that time he was. Just like you can think of Kennedy and the Bay of Pigs. I mean, political leaders are invariably of their time. So if we go back to the war, Second World War, Churchill in Britain, 1940, really, in some ways, people would say he saved us, and for the next few years. But in 1945, just as the war came to an end, there was a general election, and they kicked him out. I mean, that's because he wasn't the right person anymore to take it forward. But it's people. I said, leaders. You can think of the same I'm sure we can think of American presidents, but in this country, Tony Blair, came in 1997, but a few years later they got rid of him. Margaret Thatcher came in 1979, and then they kicked her out. So everyone, it's just for a certain period of time. So we have to be careful about saying, well, that leader had it all. Well, they probably had it all for a period of time and doing a particular job and with a particular group of people.
I'll try to, correct me if I'm wrong on this. I'll try to simplify it. So to me, as you're explaining, there is a difference between leader and leadership. And the way I look at it as a leader is a figurehead, so to speak. And leadership is a quality that you possess. And therefore, all of us have that leadership quality in us.
Yeah.
So, but then you're going to
push me again,
say
aren't
this
you?
again. I am. You knew I was going to get right there.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, and if you can't pick one, I'm going to name one to see what you think.
Well, I will. Okay, I'll mention somebody. Can I mention somebody that your listeners haven't heard of? Okay, I'll explain. Yeah,
sure.
Okay, which is really, why did I get into this? Music and conductors and orchestras, or conductors and musicians. And so I've said I've sung ever since I was a little boy. So I've sung with many great conductors, at all sorts of concerts but there was one particular time that the way it normally works is, if you're doing a choral piece, is that you learn the piece beforehand with the chorus master, and then a few days before the concert, the real conductor comes along. So we'd done this, and the piece we were learning hadn't been done for a very long time, like 100 years. And we were thinking, yeah, not surprised. We didn't think it was much of a piece at all. And therefore we got sloppy and lazy, and we were singing badly. And that was even in the first half of this rehearsal when the real conductor was coming. So we were with the chorus master, and we were really shoddy. It was dreadful. But then at the coffee break, the real conductor came along, and he, as I said, he didn't give us a lecture about the piece. He just said something like, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, Act 1, number 3. And then suddenly he is there, and he is, I can feel almost the electric bolt that hit us all when he just convinced us in that moment that there's no better piece that we should be singing. There's nothing else. There's nowhere else we should be on this wet Tuesday in October than here, because this is a masterpiece. And he's giving it 100%. And of course, if he's giving 100%, well, wow, I better give 100% too. And so does everyone else. And suddenly we're singing like a choir possessed. We were fabulous because we knew the piece. We just hadn't been concentrating before. And at the end of it, it was a wonderful second half of the rehearsal. And on the way home, I was just thinking, what happened? What did he do? Because it was lousy in the first half, and now it was fabulous. And the only difference was him. How did he do it? And I've just wanted to try and find out. And I said, without saying anything either. It's just by, of course, he communicated through, as I explained earlier, through body language. But it's also that, what is he communicating? That this is, now with music, we're very lucky in that, we weren't singing Beethoven, but if you're doing Beethoven or Bach or whatever, that is something which is a great vision to have, something to aim at. Now, if your company just makes widgets, I agree, of course, it's a bit harder to get people enthused about that. But hey, that's your job as the team leader or as the CEO, is to, okay, yeah, I know we make widgets, but what are we really? We're trying to transform the lives of customers. Making widgets is just the byproduct, but that's what we're trying to do, something which is really noble. And now, in music, it's easy, but you can still make it easy in the workplace by convincing people that this is a wonderful thing to be part of, and that they should give their all to it. And he absolutely did. And that was the most obvious time. Of course, all conductors do that to some degree, but it was just this juxtaposition of going from lousy to fabulous that prompted my interest.
Well, let me ask you this then, Charles. From your book, A Question of Leadership, and again, for folks, questionofleadership.com, what is it that the readers can take away, and what is it that your hopes are that the readers of your book take away from your book?
Well, it's a collection of essays, 30 essays, and they've been grouped into some around more leadership topics. Some are then around questions, because that's why it's called a question of leadership. Then there's a number of essays about listening, because if you question somebody, if you ask questions, the next thing is how can you listen? How can you listen like a musician? How can you listen like a conductor? And then the final one is about change, because that's what we're all doing. So the final group are about that. And quite a few of the essays are about music, but not all of them by any means. Some, I mean, I've got lots of other interests. So some are, one or two bring in my time in Hong Kong. I lived in Hong Kong for a few years. Some are, I think I mentioned Alex Honnold, climbing El Capitan. There's a whole range. And now they might be quite interesting. Okay. So, if you're listening, if there's one about conducting, and you might think, well, that's moderately interesting. But so what? How can you bring that back into your world? Well, at the end of each short essay, and they're really just 2, 3, 4 pages, each essay, there are some coaching questions, which are there to just help you take some of those lessons out and sort of make you reflect on your particular world, because your world is unique to you. Your situation is unique. Your workplace is unique to you. So that hopefully will then, ground it all. That's the idea.
Okay. It does definitely sound like you give the option for people to really find their interests and find what leadership and what leaders are to them by reading your book. So with that being said, my last thing for you is, it's a short one, I think. Complete this sentence. Great leadership begins when?
When you help people thrive.
That's beautiful. Yep. Yeah.
Said it was easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. In theory. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think there are many.
In
I think
theory.
there are many things that we overthink, we overcomplicate.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm interested in golf. So, and if any of your listeners know, if they're interested in golf, they'll know that Scotty Scheffler is the world number one. And recently he went round in 60, which again, for all golfers will know, is staggeringly good. So he went round in 60, which sounds extraordinary, but in many ways it isn't, because all you have to do is you hit the first one down the middle, and then you hit the next one down the middle, which will go onto the green, and then you hole a putt, and then you move on to the next hole and do the same 18 times. Now, of course, I'm being in some ways flippant and simplistic, but we do overthink it, because again, many amateurs they'll go to their professional for a lesson, and they'll say, oh, could you show me how to, bend the ball from left to right so I can go around a tree, or from right to left so I can, go around a tree? Well, you only need to bend it round a tree because you couldn't hit it straight. If you hit it straight down the middle, it's really not difficult. Of course, it's difficult to do, just like helping your people thrive is difficult to do. But the overarching idea is very straightforward. And we don't want to overthink things.
That's a perfect way of just saying that. Don't overthink it. And it certainly makes sense to me when you're talking about using the golf. There are not obstacles that you have to go around unless you shank it and it goes off one way. Then you got to go around it. But there's that clear path. So, folks, there you go. There's a golf lesson right there for you. Oh, Charles, I just want to say this has been a lot of fun. It's just really listening to you. And, again, you've done so much. We really didn't even touch on your Everest Base Camp
I'll have to come back and tell you about that one.
Yeah. Well, again, there's so much that you've experienced, and I look at that as, and this might be the wrong way of saying it, you had no fear. Again, that's the wrong way of probably putting it.
Let's be clear. It's Everest Base Camp. You can walk to it. You get up to 18,000 feet. It's the 11,000 feet above it that is the hard stuff. Now, it is hard. It is a hard walk. But you're not wearing crampons and tied together. I mean, it's so let's be clear about that. But once you
Yeah.
go above that, then it gets seriously tricky, and I'm not going to do that. Yes, I think my Everest peak moment days are behind me.
Base camp was the Everest
Sure,
peak.
absolutely. Yeah, you can take a nice picture from it.
Uh, yeah. And the no fear thing to me is you tried. And I think that's one of the things, even in leadership or trusting in a leader, is you you just try. On both ends, I think you have to make an effort. I'm gonna make an effort to listen to what this leader has to say, or I'm going to make that effort. I'm going to try to be a leader, or try to do something, or try to make things better for someone else. It's a try. Again, I know I've had it in the head many, many, many times, but I just want to make sure that people know a question of leadership.com
And yes, and
is the
charlesgrimes.com as well. Yeah.
yes, and both of them. So you can go there. Charles, this has been
It's been an
fantastic.
absolute delight, Chuck. It really has. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Oh, before we go, where are you located?
Oh, in a little market town called Shrewsbury, which is on the Welsh border in the UK. So about a couple 100 miles from London. So yeah.
So there you go, folks. If you're going, why does that guy sound
Yeah.
different? Well, it depends on what part of the world you're in. He may sound familiar, but there you have it. That's why. Thanks, Charles.
Thanks, Chuck.
You're welcome. Charles, I got to say, we're over an hour that we've been chatting away.